attack would depend totally on their effectiveness. The 6,000 aircraft ready for the assault would be unable to play their part in the initial bombardment. The decision to bring forward the date of the attack had virtually guaranteed they would be grounded by bad weather. In the critical sector of the front, facing Konev's forces on the Vistula, the Germans had created a tactical defense zone 10 miles deep. Inside it, on Hitler's direct orders, substantial reserves had been deployed, including 2 Panzer and 2 motorized divisions. What the waiting Germans did not know was that the Soviet artillery plan was designed to annihilate everything inside the zone. At 5 a.m. on the morning of January the 12th, 1945, Konev loosed his opening barrage. Reconnaissance units were pushed forward, hard in the wake of the falling shells. After a brief pause, the guns opened up once more, and this time, the barrage lasted 1 hour and 47 minutes. Its effect on the defenders was shattering. Konev's attack was launched from a bridgehead 40 miles wide near Sandomierz. Standing in the path of his 1st Ukrainian were the German 4th Panzer Army and part of the 17th Army. The assault broke through German lines on a front 25 miles wide, annihilating 4th Panzer. By January the 25th, Konev had reached the river Oder. To the north, 2nd and 3rd Belarusian fronts were poised to strike at the German 3rd Panzer, 4th Army, and part of the 2nd Army, defending East Prussia. The Soviets attacked on January the 13th, but faced with difficult, marshy terrain, they advanced only slowly, not reaching the Baltic until January the 26th. Meanwhile, in the center, Marshal Zhukov's 1st Belarusian front launched its attack on January the 14th. Zhukov smashed through the German defenses with such force that within 3 days he had taken Warsaw. By the 26th, the fortress city of Poznan was cut off, and the German front had virtually disintegrated. By January the 31st, forward elements of 1st Belarusian had penetrated to the middle reaches of the Oder, only 40 miles from Berlin. Four days after the Russian onslaught had begun, Adolf Hitler had moved his headquarters to Berlin, where a bunker had been built beneath the Reichschancellery. From there, he issued a stream of detailed instructions to his field commanders, and failing utterly to comprehend the magnitude of the blow that had fallen on his armies, his intervention served only to make a disastrous situation catastrophic. One of his first acts had been to order the Krak-Grossdeutschland Panzer Corps to move 150 miles south from East Prussia, to an area that had already been taken by the Soviets. The Corps was forced to retreat long before it reached its destination. On January the 27th and 28th, German forces in the east were granted a temporary respite when fierce blizzards swept across Eastern and Central Europe. In appalling conditions, the Soviet offensive wavered, and when there was a sudden thaw on the 31st, the Luftwaffe found itself, for the first time since the offensive had begun, with the edge over the enemy. The German aerodromes around Berlin were hard-surfaced, while the grass fields of the Red Air Force were now a quagmire. In 2 days, the Luftwaffe flew 5,000 sorties, smashing supply columns and making movement almost impossible. In spite of relentless German air attacks, the Russians had succeeded in seizing several bridgeheads over the Oder. Marshal Zhukov quickly ordered his forces to replenish their supplies and, in a swift assault, take the German capital on February the 15th. The plan was hopelessly ambitious. After a 300-mile advance, the fuel situation had become critical. Bitter German resistance had cost large numbers of casualties, and, just as serious, amongst many Russian formations, discipline had all but collapsed. For vast numbers of Red Army soldiers unleashed on German territory, rape and plunder had become vastly more attractive than fighting. To compound Zhukov's problems, 1st Belorussian's northern flank was now dangerously exposed. The threat to Zhukov's flank was soon dramatically underlined. After a series of increasingly dangerous probing attacks, the German 3rd Panzer Army slammed into Zhukov's line. At first, 3rd Panzer made rapid progress, but on February the 17th, its commander, General Wenck, was seriously injured in a road accident. Without its leader, the German attack lost all momentum and finally petered out. Although unsuccessful, 3rd Panzer's counterattack had an effect out of all proportion to the damage it inflicted. To Marshal Zhukov, it was clear proof that his flank must be secured before the drive to Berlin could be resumed. By now, German resistance all along the Oder line had stiffened immeasurably. The western defences had been virtually stripped to put every possible man and weapon between the Russians and the capital. An enemy thrust to Berlin was expected almost any day. What the Germans did not anticipate was that Zhukov would strike to the north. Russian operations to clear the northern flank began on March the 1st. Within 5 days, Zhukov had pushed deep into Pomerania and had taken Kolberg. By the end of the month, Rokossovsky's 2nd Belorussian had taken Danzig. To the east, 3rd Belorussian destroyed the last German pocket in East Prussia, although the fortress city of Königsberg would remain in German hands for some time. On the southern flank, Marshal Konev's 1st Ukrainian Front had launched its offensive on February the 8th and had quickly reached the river Neisse. Breslau was left encircled, and Konev's line had been pushed to lie abreast of Zhukov's, posing a dangerous threat to Berlin from the south. Marshal Konev's offensive had driven the Germans out of the valuable industrial area of Silesia, and most of its mines and factories had been captured intact. Adolf Hitler was now determined that nothing else of value should fall into Russian hands.